Dr. Lan, I'm from the Global Digest think tank group, and I want to discuss with you about, and I want to request you if you have any knowledge about military coup in Burma. There are a lot of problems and constraints, and you are expertise on this duty constraint. So,
I,
can you?
I don't have any specific knowledge about that, no.
Yes, Dr. Lan, the problem in Burma is military coup in 2021 against elected democracy uh, government, and then it was civil war. Till today, it's unable to solve and geopolitics and uh, global international society uh, not supporting liberal democratization in Burma. I mean, there was tension because of different major power, one in China and the other in America, and they are not doing anything. A lot of innocent civilians were killed deliberately by military government, and they fire villages, and a lot of Christian churches were destroyed, and villagers has to run away for safety. It's internal display. Millions of people and millions of people are now in trouble. So at least even you don't know, you can imagine the situation in Burma, how, I mean, your theory and how you can solve. Can you share to us? That will be very grateful, Dr. Lan.
I think I can't contribute anything specifically, but what I can do is I can share with you some of the knowledge that we've gained around why good people make and often repeat bad decisions. For example, I grew up in South Africa, and I had the privilege of meeting Nelson Mandela when I was very young. And I had the opportunity to ask him a question about what advice he got that had a really big impact on his life and really changed the way that he was thinking. And he said that Chief Albert Luthuli, who was the president of the African National Congress, when he retired in 1969, this was the year that I was born, it was the height of apartheid, right? A lot of discrimination about Black people in South Africa. And Chief Albert Luthuli said to the party on his retirement, he wants to leave them with a warning. And the warning is as follows, is that even though it looks like it's an impossibility today, one day they will have the opportunity to be in power. And the warning is, as long as you think of yourself as a victim, you will become the next victimizer. So I want you to think about that for a moment. What does that mean? As long as you think of yourself as a victim, when you get into power, you will become the next victimizer.
Why?
It's very, very wise. And, you know, it almost became a self-fulfilling prophecy that that's what happened. And it's very interesting because whether you study political parties or whether you study corporations or whether you study adults or children, when people feel victimized, they often learn the wrong lesson. The lesson that they learn is that when you have the opportunity in future to prevent you from feeling powerless and helpless and hopeless, do it to them before they can do it to you. And that's how a victim, somebody that can suffer horrible abuse or neglect, can turn into the victimizer. And it's often when you see what happens at a political level, where freedom movements that start off with a good intent of fighting for the freedom for their people often end up doing the exact opposite. When they have the opportunity, they become the victimizers. And this is a very, very unfortunate thing, but unfortunately very much related to human behavior and how we often learn the wrong lessons from our own experience. It takes tremendous courage on both sides to do the opposite. South Africa was extremely lucky because we were verging on a civil war, if you remember, in the early 1990s. And it took two courageous leaders, both Nelson Mandela as well as President F.W. de Klerk. They both ended up winning the Nobel Peace Prize, but it took incredible courage from both of them to say that this situation cannot continue. It's not that it's a win-lose, it's a lose-lose for both. You'll be trapped if you start a civil war, you'll be trapped in a civil war for a very long time. And all that will happen is when the one that's now the victim, when they become into power, they will become the victimizer, and so it continues. It takes tremendous courage and incredible leadership and restraint to do the opposite, to fight for peace, to treat the others as human beings, treat them with respect. Even if you disagree with them, fundamentally is to always treat them as human beings and treat them with respect. And that to me is the only way out of these situations. It's completely understandable how these situations develop. As I mentioned, because of this, people learn the wrong lesson. They learn to do it to the other side before it's done to them. And you see it with kids that are, abused at home, and they become the bully at school. As long as you think of yourself as the victim, there's a very good chance that you will become the victimizer.
So maybe, Dr. Lan, it's more psychologically and, the way thinking of each person will be very much related, right? And, it's similar. I agree with you. It's similar in case of Burma. Those, leadership, you said, who feel victim and victim will be victimizer too. It's like, we have the party, NLD party, and current, they made NUG government, opposition to military government. They did similar, as you said, during their power, they are also like victimizer. They are not doing very well in terms of, liberal democratization and ethnic issue and, all things they failed to do. And now also they again forming NUG opposition government, and they only intention for taking position and power and not really make a lot of solution. They let a lot of mislead the people, and the people misunderstanding, and the conflict become longer and more, casualty because of them. As you said, they become victimizer. So that is in one side. I agree with your point. And how do you think that should be totally ground changing, or different way of thinking, or how it can be,
It's very hard, because I think The same with South Africa at the time, both sides were hoping that the outside world will step in and solve the problem and take their side. But that never happened. It cannot happen. It cannot work. There's nobody from the outside coming to save you.
So you mean in South Africa case, there was no geopolitical involved or major
I mean,
power involved?
both sides were lobbying, of course, the external world to pick their side, right? They were constantly explaining to the world why their side is right and the other side is wrong, right? Especially when the African National Congress started getting into terrorist warfare and were planting bombs and killing, women and children. There was a big outcry for that, to say, yes, we understand your right to fight for freedom and to end apartheid, but you shouldn't have the right to kill innocent people, right? So both sides were claiming victims. That never worked. It lasted for many decades where both sides were hoping that they will be saved by the outside world. They had to save themselves. It took two leaders of great courage.
So you mentioned there was no involvement from Western country or like Eastern country or African country in this apartheid in South Africa.
No, to finally solve
you,
the problem, they had to do it from within.
I see. You point more, it's related to the leadership is the key to deal with the solving the problem. The leadership are key, right?
Right. And it has to start with viewing the other side as human beings. That
Right.
even though we disagree fundamentally about the politics or about the religion, these are human beings. They have the same goals and aspirations as we have. How can we find a way that is a win-win for both sides?
Right. As you mentioned, in South Africa, there was no geopolitical or major power involvement, and in either side, or white or black side.
No, and of course, both sides tried, right? Both sides tried to get the outside world to come in, to rescue them, to pick their side. And it lasted for many decades. And, you had the world was divided. Some people that were supporting the fight for ending apartheid, some people that were not actively supporting it, but only passively. And then you had those that were actually in favor of it, that was aligned with it. But none of that worked. It had to be solved from within. So it's very hard, but like I said,
external factor, not significant involvement, cannot involve, right, in South Africa. But in case of Burma, the problem is, this democratic side, opposition side, we don't have any support from democratic country, especially Western country, like military weapon or any significant material to move freedom movement against military coup, but no support from the democratic countries around the world. But the other side, the military coup side, they have support from Russia. Russia is mainly support logistically, a lot of weapons. So we don't have support. Democratic side has no support, but the military coup side has support by international society. That is what's wrong with those global geopolitics. If they get support, that Western country, democratic country should support the opposition too.
Well, the problem is all that will happen is that the war will just escalate, right?
Right, it will escalate.
How does it solve the problem? Nobody's going to win.
Right.
Nobody wins at wars.
If the population, the overall population, almost 80–90% are against military coup. In terms of demography, the population want democracy, but they don't have weapons, sufficient weapons. Now, especially, they got a lot of air strike, air bombing, artillery bombing.
It's extremely
shooting.
sad. I get it. It's the same crisis
Right.
that's happened between Russia and Ukraine, right?
Yeah,
It's
I
the
mean,
same crisis.
in Burma,
It cannot be solved by more weapons.
yes. In
You
case
know,
of Burma, Russia support a lot of
it can
military.
only be solved through a negotiated settlement.
Right.
That takes courage from both sides, incredible
But
courage from both sides.
right, in case of Burma, democratic side did not have sufficient to defend from military continuously attacking and
Right.
bombarding
And what will happen if
airstrike.
they get weapons? The other side will just get more weapons.
Of course, if they support the overall
But
population.
you understand that that's not the solution. I know it feels like the solution. We feel like there's somebody outside of us that will save us. It cannot work.
At least we need to defend from the military coup leader keep attacking the innocent people. How to defend? At least we can shoot down airplane, aircraft, and at least we can destroy
And it's like
the
getting into a
original
fight.
bombing
No,
airport or
I
airspace.
understand. I understand fully the pressure. All I'm saying is that when you look at history, it can never work. Escalating the amount of weapons that's available can never work.
But if international, one possible thing is if international society decisively they may supporting opposition with overwhelmingly, we can fast defend from airstrike or artillery, undiscriminated shooting and bombing. And then second, we can destroy the headquarters of the military. That will be finished, because
But it can't work.
the
It can't
military
work because
government doesn't have demographic. They don't have population. Without population support in the military, it will be, dry out all the strength. They are now even they are losing their strength because of China supporting, Russia supporting, other weapons supporting the
that's exactly the problem. All that will
continuously.
happen is that both sides will just keep on getting more and more weapons and more people get killed. How is that solving the problem?
Right. One time,
It cannot solve.
if they do one-time support, heavy,
It won't help.
investing,
It won't help. The other side will just escalate again.
I don't think the military can be long time survive because they don't have demographic. No
You
demographic
said
means
that they have
no.
Russia and China behind them.
No, I mean that is external issue. They only supply weapon or logistic or something. They can, but even we are not inviting American or European came into Burma soil. No, we don't request. We just want supply sufficient weapon to defend our innocent people. And we will just one time destroy the military headquarters, and this thing one time then finish, because military has no
I
demographic.
understand it feels like there should be a quick solution, but I think when you think about it, really think about it, there's no good probability that that can happen. Remember, both sides feel they are right. Do you agree? Both sides
So the
believe
leadership is, as you mentioned, the thing is the key issue, the leadership.
exactly. That's the only solution. The
military
people, the average people have to put pressure internally on the leadership to say, this is not the life we want for ourselves and for our children.
Right.
You
But
have to negotiate.
let's see the leadership. The coup leader, military coup leader, has no intention to solving or restoring or to put back on track the country, because they have psychologically, as you mentioned, they have wrong thinking. The way they thinking and the way their perception is very wrong. They always think the military is above any political situation, any system in the country. Wherever you are elected or wherever you are legitimate, they always think that is not the important. They think the military should be always first. They have to be on the top. Only then the elected or legitimate should be go ahead. Without military involvement, consent, they should not do. That is military thinking. So that is very wrong structure and wrong
But
thinking.
what you are explaining is you think the solution is to get more military on your side. Isn't that the same thinking?
Not necessary. I'm just explaining how military and the coup leader in their mind. They
No,
are
I
like
understand that. The problem is that there's no real solution. Show me where in the world it has worked.
but
With
in
outside
terms of
military support, it solved the problem. It has never worked.
in
It
term
can
of
only be solved from within.
in term of balance, theory of balance, it can be, we need a lot of military. But you said the balance theory is not
It
work.
cannot work. It will just escalate the war. It will make the war worse, not better.
So we have crisis of the leadership,
You have a real leadership crisis.
because the way they're thinking and the way their perception is totally wrong. So
Right. And what happened, what helped in South Africa is that there were religious leaders that were respected by both sides that started speaking up and saying we have to find a solution from within. We have to get together. We have to treat each other as human beings and understand that we all share the same goal.
right, it's good opportunity in South Africa, but we don't have such kind of commonly acceptable in Burma. The military is far the other side, and the opposition group are also far beyond. They are not see each other eye to eyes. And main thing, ground problem is their thinking and their perception is totally wrong. That is not fit with any theory and any concept from any political system around the world. That is
Well,
the
if you have
problem.
two sides who
Maybe
both believe that the
it
solution
is
is to
fit
wipe
for,
out the other side, how will that solve the problem? You understand what I mean? You have two sides.
right,
Both sides believe they are right. Both sides believe that they have been victimized and that the only solution is to wipe out the other side. How can that ever work?
but I want the international society should emphasize, and they
How
should
will that
they should
help? I know it feels like it would be helpful, but practically, how will it help?
but first thing they need to understand the leader, either side,
The
either
unfortunate
side,
thing, the unfortunate thing is that all the countries today has got their own internal problems.
right. I mean,
Right. There's no money to spend massively in helping other countries solve their problems because their own citizens are solve the problem here locally first. That's true whether you're talking about America or Europe or Russia or China. You know, the people want their politicians to use their own tax money to solve their own country's problems first. And every country has got big problems. Yes, people will do the polite thing and say, we support Burma, we support the government, we are calling for sanctions. All of those things are very nice, but when you practically think about it, and I know it's a very tough stand, but when you practically think about it, is to say, will that have a chance to solve the problem? It's a leadership crisis. It can
So,
only be solved from within.
Dr. Lan, what is your theory of constraints? How it's relevant to do? Because you don't agree with balance theory, right? And that constraint theory, how can you say on this Burmese issue?
So the application of theory of constraints is in two areas. So when you apply it to any system, that can be a country, it can be a business, it can be an individual.
But
You
here is a country.
Right. So the country has a goal, which is to achieve a better life for all its citizens, right?
Right,
Regardless of which country you look at, that is the common goal that we all share, is that our leadership is responsible for creating a better life for all its citizens. That's the goal.
right,
What theory of constraints says that in order to achieve that goal, it requires certain resources. And any resource that you don't have enough of to achieve that goal is a constraint, is a weak link, and you should focus on that and forget about everything else. That is what theory of constraints says, is
right,
to find out what is the weakest link, what is the scarce resource that if you had more of it, you could
right,
achieve that goal, right?
right.
Now,
Yes,
when you think about, well, what is blocking a leader from doing that, there's some kind of limiting belief in their mind
right,
that allows them to allocate the resources better to achieve that goal. And that's the other side of theory of constraints. It's kind of like a mental bottleneck. It's not a physical resource. It's some kind of belief or assumption. Like that assumption that I shared, do it to them before they do it to me. That
right.
becomes the problem. As long as I believe that, I can never make progress because the other side has a right to survive.
So, as you mentioned, that can be because of less resources. But you said in terms of non-military thing. So in Burmese military coup leader has less resources in understanding, in his perception, in his belief is uh, weak. He doesn't have sufficient resources about what is the structure, political structure in the country, to any democratic country, especially around the world.
It, it,
Everybody common acceptable uh, belief and understanding, perception. He has lack of resources. Similar to opposition leader, there are many unqualified people want to be leadership and opposition that can also lack of resources. So that resources I guess we can supply one by think tank group. Think tank group should be able to supply all this leadership shortage of resources in terms of knowledge and belief and
well, I
understanding.
think
So they have to accept a lot of think tank and international should engage with a lot of think tank to those leadership like China can play, Russia can play, American, European can play to to supply resources, think tank resources. So that's my view.
Yes, I think what think tanks can do is to engage, to try and bring people together rather than take them further apart, to remind people that everybody are human beings. We ultimately want the same thing, right? We should treat each other with respect. And if our goal is a better life for all, the first thing that you have to do is to ask yourself, the things that you are currently doing, is it getting you there? Right?
Right.
Is the
The thing
current
the thing is
civil war, is it
right,
going to get you there? And
right,
it requires that maturity to say, no, it can't get us there. You say, well, what could get us there? Is there another way?
right. It can
And I
be
think South Africa set a good example that both leaders had the courage to remind themselves and their followers about what's the real goal. We want a peaceful society where people can live in harmony and be happy and work hard and make a good living, right?
right.
Well,
It
how are
can
we
be
going to get there? Civil war can't get us there.
right. It can be the leadership unwilling to even listen or engaging with the think tank group. That will be no alternative because we are not you did not encourage for military way solution, and you don't want to be weapon supply. So then we find there should be uh, uh, think tank resources to supply those leadership shortage of knowledge and belief and understanding. But if they don't want to engage with think tank, they don't want to invite or listen to think tank, what will be the alternative? That is, the very the most concession for the leader.
Right? It's like an entrepreneur, you know, if nobody buys in, nobody wants to support them, they just keep on trying. Right? That's the hard challenge, that if the goal is important enough for you, you don't quit when there's rejection. You keep on trying. You try a different approach. You try approach different people.
But
But
in that,
as soon as you are taking a side, you cannot be the facilitator.
right. So now we are not taking a side. First,
Well,
as
if you're calling for more weapons from the
right,
outside world to support what you believe are the democratically elected government, then you are taking the side.
right. So, but we
One that
forget
is not
about
taking the side says, we are one people, we share the same goal, we want the best for our families in the long run. We understand how we got here, is that both sides feel they have the right to survive.
right.
Is there a
So
better way?
using think tank group that is non-weapon and non, taking side, we can use think tank for both leaders, from opposition and military coup leader. That
Yes.
can be facilitated by international community, right? From China, Russia, they can let them leaders from both sides should listen think tank and engage with think tank. That will be the best step to deal or solving this problem in Burma, because think tank is not taking side. We are just supplying resources, intangible, invisible, those important resources, right?
Right.
How do you think those international society should facilitate think tank with those uh, leaders from both sides?
Well, the first thing is that you are not the first country that has gone through this. Right? Others have gone through it. I know very well the example from South Africa And I think there's a lot of lessons to learn from that example. And there are other examples that you can also learn from. You can both learn from what worked and what didn't work. And that would be a good way for the think tank to reach out to say, can we put together a summit with experts from around the world, from different foundations, and we see
Right.
if we can come up with an approach that could potentially work. That
Right.
doesn't require more weapons and escalation of the war, because that can never work.
What about African leaders from both sides? They used to get resource from think tank. They rely on think tanks. Did you ever see that?
I think it will be difficult for them to rely on the think tank. I think it's like nudging, right? It's reminding them about what's the goal that we're trying to achieve, reminding them that the current path will not get us there, will take us further and further apart from that, will make the situation worse for everybody.
So it means we can
And
say
encouraging
that
them to get together and to say that the think tank can facilitate that. The think tank can help to bring in experienced experts and negotiators that are truly objective and that have a track record of being able to resolve that. There's many people I know in South Africa, that were part of that negotiations, that now run non-profit foundations that are helping others. So I think when you start looking around, you will find that there's no shortage of people that will want to help if it comes to a negotiated settlement solution, right?
right. So you said that they used to have a informal way of think tank and open, and they get supply the think tank resources by African leaders, as you said, many organizations and many open way that can, they can keep update and they can make a good decision, right?
Yeah,
So
it's very hard. I'm not saying it is easy. It is the opposite, right? It's very, very, very hard. But to think that the solution is to balance it, that doesn't work. I wish it did, but it doesn't. There's no history that shows that that works. Yes, the
right.
international community can put pressure through sanctions, through banning the leaders, from traveling, to make it very hard for them. Yes, the pressure can help to bring them to the negotiating table, but ultimately that is the only solution, is to bring both sides to the negotiating table, treat each other as human beings that share a goal, and see how can we both work together to bring around peace.
Right. Thank you very much, Dr. Alan, for your sharing your knowledge resources for solving the ongoing conflict in Burma. I think uh, one day we can able to solve it similar to South Africa. Thank you very much, Dr. Alan. See you
You're
next
welcome.
time.
Okay, bye-bye.